Alright everyone, now it's time to talk about the more minor news of the day, which is the J6 committee has officially wrapped up its proceedings. They have referred criminal charges against Donald Trump. Now, behold the AstroTurf. I want you to do a little experiment. Look up J6 referrals historic on any news aggregator right now. What do you see? Very, very interesting how many legacy media and missing link media leftoid outlets are calling it historic. It's a historical referral of charges. It's a historical case. Basically, 2 more weeks blew it on. We've got him this time. We haven't heard this before at all. I seem to recall similar hyperbole being used in the wake of the Steele dossier, claiming that Donald Trump had Russian hookers piss on the Obama's bed. Or that he was doing dirty dealing at Trump Tower, embezzlement, and tax fraud. By the way, all these people have his tax returns. We haven't heard much about that now, have we? Could it be because the IRS already went through the tax returns by every goddamn line after line and found absolutely no wrongdoing? Yeah, that could be the reason why. It's because it's all a big distraction. In the end, the J6 committee was a 2-year-long waste of time that was stacked by a bunch of unipartyists, Democrats and a couple of so-called Republicans, both of which are out of office very soon. Liz Cheney losing by one of the highest margins of any incumbent House member in the entire history, by the way, of the entire United States. When we look at their findings, we already knew what they were going to find. It's a kangaroo court. By the way, a lot of hair splitting when I pointed that out the other day by leftoids trying to defend the J6ers, saying, well, it's not even a court. Ha ha ha. Sticks doesn't know what he's talking about. It's called a colloquial usage. You would know this if you knew more about the English language. I had stopped even bothering trying to correct him because I'm like, dude, when you argue with a fool, that makes 2, so I'm going to go and do something more positive like get some goddamn sleep or drink another cup of coffee. Hell, trim my toenails. That would be more fruitful than trying to argue with someone who clearly doesn't understand the basic modern usage of English parlance. I'm an editor, dude. You don't want to try to step to me. Then cognitive dissonance kicks in and, they just poop all over themselves. They think this is an intelligent argument. Here's the problem with J6. Number one, we already knew what was going to happen. We knew that charges would be referred. They had already effectively confirmed that they were going to do that long ago when they impeached him for insurrection. We already knew that these individuals were going to find him guilty at least of that. As well as a conspiracy to lie, conspiracy to... I can't remember all the charges because, they're meaningless. Here's the problem. We now have 2 possible roads to go down as a republic. Either they're going to do this Giuliani/Roger Stone style, and you're going to get news of Trump being indicted, and they're going to have live coverage of him being let out in handcuffs or something. That would be the republic is officially dead moment, to be clear, so we're hoping that they have a little more restraint. And even some of the unipartyists like Mike Pence are saying that they shouldn't charge him. I think that the more likely route is a little more subversive than direct. It still damages Trump. They're still attempting to get a messy primary going or deny him the general should he be nominated anyway. We'll see whether they're successful at doing so. Here's what they want to do. They want to hold the possibility of charges over Trump's head through the primary process. This is not going to be a fast-tracked sort of situation. They're not going to make their decision in the next couple of weeks or something like that, dragging evil Orange Drumpfler into a cell by his stupid haircut. That's not what they want. They want to do damage to his political credibility to make him seem more like a liability to Republican voters in hopes that someone else viable will jump into the primaries, whether it's DeSantis, maybe little Marco gets in. Chris Christie, he wouldn't win even if Trump were charged. Trump could run from a jail cell and still win the nomination over someone like him. Mike Pence might be dumb enough to get in. They're going to try to stop Trump from becoming the Republican nominee. At that point, by the way, Trump may very well run as an independent, crushing all the toys on his way out, which would be hilarious. I'd probably still vote for him because the Republicans are cucks. I have no time for most of them, unless it was like Rand Paul, maybe Ron DeSantis, assuming that he's not in on the joke and there's no evidence of him being complicit. Okay, then maybe I can deal with it. At the very least, the person leading the country is potentially sane. Otherwise, yeah, I'd probably back an independent Trump candidacy. Fuck it, who gives a damn? The Republic would effectively be over at that point. Here's the thing. They want to deny him the primary. They're trying to hold this over people's heads. That is what they are doing, just to be clear. The referral means nothing. The DOJ has to parse through literally the entire report, every bit of evidence, etc., etc., etc. It will take months. What does it overlap with? The Republican fucking primaries. Oh, how interesting. The timing is totally coincidental. Should he be nominated anyway, as I suspect will still be the case. In fact, the last time that they tried to shaft him, he gained popularity because, of course, it seems like he's being persecuted. They're not wrong when they conceive of this. If he becomes nominee, then, what they're hoping for is to have triggered a messy primary in which Trump has been embattled by this and by debate from his opponent or opponents. They're hoping, therefore, that they have plausibility for when they honk in the general election. It will happen. They will do some honking, and they will say, well, when Trump potentially loses, well, clearly the American voters rejected Trump over the fact that he was a criminal. Well, clearly Republicans refused to turn out in as high of numbers because they were worried that Donald Trump would be jailed in office and it would cause a constitutional crisis. They'll have a million excuses for that should it happen. It's not clear that that will happen, but that's clearly their goal. Their goal and intent is not to put Trump in a jail cell unless they have absolutely no other choice. They don't really have the evidence anyway. Exculpatory evidence was left out of the J6 proceedings. Mountains of exculpatory evidence. Witnesses that said Trump did nothing wrong were never allowed to testify. And by the way, in closing here, I will say one thing about Kevin McCarthy. I do not like Kevin McCarthy. I don't wish him to be the Speaker of the House. He's a weak cuck. He's just shy of total GOP. He leans towards MAGA when it's convenient to him. He's basically like a less honest Ted Cruz. I'm not a fan of Kevin McCarthy. But he was correct to abandon the proceedings and refuse to participate in them, and I'll tell you why. You should not be giving him flack for this. You should be giving him flack for everything else that he does. He was right not to bother putting principled conservatives on the J6 committee and allowing it to be just Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, both of whom are going to be out of a job very shortly. The J6 committee was always going to refer charges. They were always going to vote in favor of that. They made that plain as day during the impeachment proceedings before Trump left office. They were always going to do that. Nancy Pelosi explicitly told Kevin McCarthy several of the people he wanted to choose would not be allowed on the committee. Why? Because they actually would have asked questions. They actually would have pointed out, hey, you're blocking exculpatory evidence. This is not a proper proceeding at all. What the hell are you doing? They would have fought. They would have actually done what most Republicans are reluctant to do, which is actually fight back against their opponent. They would have actually attempted to overcome the charges and say, look, you don't have the evidence. I don't know what your fucking problem is. This is a partisan freak show. So Nancy Pelosi was going to block those individuals. What's the difference between having two conservatives, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger there, and having four of them? There's no difference. If anything, you justify the proceedings, and then the Democrats get to say, well, this bipartisan commission decided Trump was guilty despite the fact that there were four Republicans there. And then the said Republicans boil down to Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, and a couple of other cucks. There's no Lauren Boebert. There's no Marjorie Taylor Greene there to actually ask the hard-hitting questions. A bunch of weaklings, a bunch of pathetic cucks that don't even like Trump would be the ones there defending him. Yeah, that would go over so well. And so in the end, when they still vote unanimously, it looks like the Republicans really throw Trump under the bus. By not participating, it's really one-sided. Again, Liz Cheney will be out of politics in a few days, so no problem. They can refer their charges. Now the DOJ, led by a person who originally was going to be appointed to SCOTUS by Barack fucking Obama and was blocked by the Republicans and then by Trump, he's going to be the one going over the paperwork. Now, that doesn't mean that he decides to charge. That would cause a constitutional crisis. To take a former sitting executive and attempt to charge them with insurrection when clearly they did not participate in fomenting an insurrection would probably cause rioting. It would probably cause mass protests. It would be a usurpation of the will of the people, at least the Republican lay people, and of the Constitution. It would be utterly unacceptable, and if that happens, unfortunately, our democracy, so-called, democracy's small r, our representative republic will be effectively hanging by a thread. If they don't do that, though, hey, it's the same old deep state shenanigans they've been engaged in, and I speculate that that'll be the fact. They're simply trying to trigger a messy primary. They're trying to do the drive-in with DeSantis 24 thing in order to try to knock Trump out of the primaries, number one, or if that doesn't work, to try to weaken him for a general so they have plausibility when the ballot machines go brrr. That's about all. Peace out.